Okay, so today we're going to talk all about branding. And I think so many businesses confuse branding with marketing, and they're just not the same thing. And you're going to know what I'm talking about because you walk in a business and you can just tell that it's buttoned up. And we would argue that that's the first sign of branding. So today, Melanie, what do you think about branding?
I think branding is probably the single most important thing that you're going to do for your business. And I choose to call it connecting the dots. That's what I call branding of a business because again, people think that branding is necessarily their marketing and it's not. It's the full show. It's everything that they experience either online when they begin the search for you or walking into your business. And that's all the way from how was the parking lot? Was there, a dirty diaper left in it and beer cans laying around? Or was it nice and clean? Did they have to park next to the dumpster? Was there a big hill to walk up? I had that come into play in the last business that I owned and operated. It was the parking lot was at the bottom of a hill and got a little flack for that. But it's all the way through from the parking lot to the front door to that first person that you experience, which, hopefully is not you. Hopefully you have employees and you don't have to be the only face that's seen, although it's really good to be the face that's seen as the owner or manager. But it's everything. It's all the things.
I love your comment about saying that branding is being buttoned up because I think we just know it. It's one of those things where you walk into a business and you just know, and I can't remember the name of this company, so you're going to have to help me out. But I know that there's a candle that I really like that I like to burn at my house. I can't remember the name of it. You probably can tell me. Is it like anthropology
It
or
is anthropology,
anthropology
even though
candle?
you call it Abercrombie and
Yeah,
Fitch, two
Abercrombie
different
Fitch, but
things.
regardless, it's obviously didn't give me the name of the company, but the kicker is when I walk into that store, I smell that candle, and that aroma is actually part of their branding, and I think sometimes people wouldn't think that the aroma would be your branding, but like a bakery, that's part of your branding. Chocolate
Mhm.
factory, when you walk into our factory and you smell chocolate, it's part of our branding. So it's all those elements that really just kind of button you up.
I agree 1,000%. And so many people, like you've kind of alluded to, they'll think, oh, I went on Canva and I made a logo. My branding is done. And that's not true. Not true at all. Because as you and I know, that's a brand asset. That's not your branding. That might be where the seed is planted and where you're beginning your brand because you want to create a visual representation of kind of the direction that you're going in and the experience you want people to have. But that's not your branding.
And I always tell companies that when you think about branding, you think about discipline. Marketing is about creativity, but branding is really more about discipline. And I know you hear me say that all the time about you have to be disciplined. And I think at Hill Country Chocolate, we've done a pretty good job with being disciplined. And I think when we introduce any new thing, I think it's a pretty good argument that the very first thing we ask ourselves is this going to fit our brand?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny that you talk about discipline because not a lot of people know that Doc Dano over here has OCD like no other about just being repetitive and he does the same habits and things all day, every day till the end of time. But it helps because it brings it into our business and it lends consistency. And we all know yeah, I'm a little bit the same way too. I don't know that I have OCD, but I'm extremely picky about the look of literally everything. I walk through the store and I make sure every single day, multiple times a day, that the products are all merchandised exactly how they should be. And by being should be, it's in my brain how I think it should look. Easy to shop, easy for customers to see what the product is, make sure everything has a price on it, and everything is clean. It has to be clean. That's part of our brand is in the chocolate world, a lot of chocolatiers, a really great asset to have is to be clean in what you do. And we take that to a whole other level. I mean, the inside of our factory looks like an operating room with these white walls in there that we keep everything just stark and clean. And that translates to the front, even though the front has very little white color in it. Everything is clean. We really try hard. And if somebody sees something out there that's not clean, you better tell me.
And I think for me, one of the biggest challenges on being disciplined around your branding is that at the same time you have to be disciplined, you have to also stretch the boundaries a little bit for customers. You always want customers, at least to me, to be a little bit surprised. So for instance, and it's a challenge because I mean, we don't just make for us artisanal bonbons that are shiny and beautiful. We do those. We make those. But we also make a marshmallow. So the question is, how do you create something like the lowly marshmallow to fit an artisanal European style chocolate brand? And I think there are lots of challenges that go into doing that, from packaging to making sure that, okay, it's a really good marshmallow. It's got really good chocolate on top of it. It's cut exactly square. It's fresh, right? It's packaged in something. But I think as a company, that is the challenge. You're not going to be able to create one thing that's one and done, because your customers are going to expect you to be a little bit creative in your store and your marketing, but you got to stay disciplined to your brand.
I would agree. I agree 100%. But like you just alluded to with just the marshmallow, just because we're making a marshmallow and it's sitting alongside some European style bonbons and truffles, yes, we want to kind of throw them for a loop that it's a marshmallow, but it has also the same gold sticker on the front that other items do. It's in a really great package. It's not just in, the farmer's market simple plastic bag, which there's nothing wrong with that, but if you're setting it next to European style products, they still have to align. They have to go together. You have to connect the dots. It can't look like it's 100% out of place. It's an extension of your brand, and it's maybe something a little more whimsical or fun, and we get to do that because we're chocolate, so
So give me your thoughts on this one, because you've heard me say this before, and she is correct. I'm a little bit spreadsheet like OCD,
a little
a
bit.
little bit. But I also think that, and I've heard these words come out of your mouth, which I think are the same thing, but the little things matter. And I think the issue there is that in branding, everything has equal weight. You don't get the luxury of thinking, oh, that's more important than something else. In fact, to a customer, they're probably going to weight everything equally, meaning you can't leave something out. Is that fair?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, all the way down to your outdoor signage. If you've got a, lighted sign and 3 of the bulbs are out on it, people notice that. They're gonna see that, and that reflects on your brand, not just your product. It may have nothing to do with your product, but it's the whole package, it's the whole image that they're seeing. Same as if, all the light bulbs are lit on your sign, it's nice and clean, you've got this beautiful product, but the person that you're talking to at the counter could care less that you're in the room or that you're there, or maybe they're bothered by you coming in and disrupting their book reading or whatever they're doing at the time. That that reflects on your brand. That's your image. That's the whole package. Has nothing to do with product, but everything to do with your brand.
So I have a feeling about customers, and that branding
Me
needs
too.
well, you do too, but I have this feeling about customers that branding is one of those things where, if done well, customers don't notice it. They
Right.
walk into a business and it's just sort of an immersive experience that they don't notice all of the things you've done right. Now, maybe you and I do, because we take this seriously. And I know we'll talk in a minute about how we audit a business's branding. But I think most customers, they just don't notice it. They walk in and everything is so buttoned up that there's sort of an immersive experience. But here's my theory: the customers notice the one thing that's not part of it.
Absolutely.
So they're very picky in discrimination. They have very just good discrimination around things that they notice that are not aligned with the brand, but they're not gonna notice all the things that you've done to align it. And that can be a little frustrating, I think, to business owners, because they put a lot of attention to this and, people don't ever notice it. Well, it's probably good that they don't notice. It's probably good. You want a background kind of resonance of that business. Is that fair too?
I agree 100%. And coming from full service restaurant background myself, one of the things that I would notice long before I was ever a business owner, when I walked into a restaurant and I sat down and I opened up the menu, what does the menu look like, first of all? Is it clean? Does it have, chips and salsa spilled on it or whatever it is, whatever type of restaurant you're at? The menu is the first thing you're handed. That's the first thing you're looking at. You're getting your brand perception from, the parking lot to the menu, basically. But then something that I always noticed, which was a little weird, is the napkin. The type of napkin and the way that the silverware is your silverware already sitting on the table when you get there? Or is it in a little paper bag that they're going to bring to you later? Like, am I paying $60 for a steak and my flatware is in a paper bag? That those dots don't connect. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Am I at a really high-end restaurant and I'm given a paper napkin or a cloth napkin? It's just one of those things. And again, back to the menu. Is it some really nice and man, menus can be expensive. I do know this. The really nice leather-bound ones are crazy expensive, but it has to fit your brand. So if you're selling expensive food, you have to have an expensive menu. You can't hand them a laminated piece of paper that's with, tiny writing, and I've got my phone out for a flashlight trying to read it. Like, just doesn't make sense.
And I think you bring up an expensive restaurant. So I think there's a good example there. And it's not, we understand that every small business can't be a five-star restaurant. You can't have all of the dollars to spend that happens in those kind of restaurants. But I'm reminded, like in Dallas, Texas, there's a restaurant called Fearing's. And Dean Fearing, icon in Texas food, been around forever. But one thing that's part of branding there is actually staffing. So staffing is part of branding, right? You sit down and you talk to a wait staff that's been there for a couple of years. They totally understand the menu. They even understand nuances of the menu that aren't on the menu, right? They can tell you, answer questions. They can give you an opinion, but the opinion is often part of the branding. So they have a wine person there that's been there for decades. And that wine person can recommend wine. That wine person is part of the branding. And I think a lot of companies don't really recognize that retention of your employees is part of your branding. It's how well they understand and can communicate about your product.
Absolutely. And back to what you were saying about employees, and then, yeah, I gave the example of like a fine dining restaurant, but there's other branding. Like you said, it doesn't have to be expensive. We went and ate barbecue at Cooper's in Llano. Totally different from, a five-star fine dining restaurant experience. But man, great barbecue, fantastic, been around since the beginning of time. You park in the small little parking lot there, and you actually walk up to an open pit and order your food as a pitmaster is cutting it up and, sending it on for you. That's part of their brand, and that's okay. Like, I'm not expecting to sit down at the picnic table with the roll of paper towels in the middle, and then someone's gonna come along and open up a linen napkin and place it in my lap. That's not what I'm expecting there. So just make sure that when you're developing all of your branding, that it's consistent. It's telling a story, it's building an image. What do you want that image to be?
I think that's a great analogy because one thing I was actually going to mention this one, that when you walk into a business that's spent a fortune on branding, and you know what I'm talking about. They've hired some Austin company and they've done all of their logos and everything. And you walk in the door and they've got a Scotch tape sticker or they've got some kind of sign hanging inside the business. It creates a disconnect. But if you go over to like Cooper's is a great example because they may hang a sign up that says sold out at pork chops. I would actually argue that helps their branding, right? That's part of their branding. That looks like it's a local place that's actually
Mhm.
kind of done that work. So I totally agree with that. Okay, so why do small businesses actually struggle with branding maybe more than big companies do?
I think there's a couple reasons why, especially if you haven't ever worked for a big company prior to starting your small business. Maybe you've always just been a, stay-at-home mom or something, and you've turned your passion from your garage into a business, and you didn't put a lot of thought into your branding. You're gonna miss a lot of little things, a lot of those little nuances we talked about. If you've worked for a big company before, though, there are standard operating procedures. Everything is lined out. It's like when you buy a franchise of McDonald's and everyone's fries taste the same all the way across everywhere. It's because there's SOP, there's standard operating procedures for every single thing, all the way from how you turn the lights on in the morning, how you turn the lights off at night, which employee is in charge of cleaning what and making sure that it's maintained and filled and stocked and whatnot. And I think some small businesses, maybe they just don't connect all of those dots.
I think you brought up something really compelling here. And that is also that there is incredible value in actually doing branding well. McDonald's is a fantastic example. Of course, that company's worth billions of dollars, right? And that's maybe not the perfect example for a small business, but I think it's actually relevant because when you do things well in branding, you get incredible value within your business. You could franchise your business one day. People walk in and they feel buttoned up. But I think as a business owner, again, it's challenging because it's really easy to see the line item from actually doing a Facebook ad and creating a marketing creative and putting it out there and getting responses that people buy your product. Whereas when you try to do those 1,000 points of light around your business, from bathrooms to candles to cleaning, often you don't see that line item in the way that the value creation occurs, but I think it does.
It's there. I mean, I can tell you, I can give you the example of owning a bakery and a coffee shop. You came into my bathroom at Twisted Sisters in downtown Fredericksburg, and I can't say I'm the only one because I wasn't in every single bathroom on Main Street, but you would walk into my bathroom, into my ladies' room, and there was a whole table in there that had toothpicks on it and tissues, hand lotion, all the things that you could possibly want, maybe that are in your purse or you forgot and didn't bring, are in that bathroom. Totally unexpected. Can't tell you how many people would come up to the register and say, "Your bathroom is amazing," because I have mints in there too. You're a coffee shop. Maybe you've got coffee breath because you had a meeting there and you sat there and had 3 cups of coffee and you don't have any gum on you or a breath mint or something before you leave. Little tiny things like that, people really, really, really notice. And again, it's part of your brand. How do they feel? Because it's all about feeling and perception and emotion for most people when they go somewhere, at least for us in food and beverage. You don't necessarily just walk away and say, "Oh my God, they had the best sign I've ever seen on the outside of a building." You walk away and say, I felt, really great in there. I felt elevated. I felt special. The staff made me feel special. I was sitting in this great chair. Everything was nice and clean. It smelled good. The music was great. The lighting was fantastic. It's the brand.
It is the brand, and I think you brought up a really great point here is that what's the ROI on branding? And I think a lot of people step back to what I just said, and they can't see this sort of straight line item. You
Right.
can't say, "Oh, I clean my bathrooms and I'm, getting an extra $5 in the cash register." That doesn't really work that way. But what does happen is that the people tell the word of mouth story. They leave and they go,
Mhm.
"Wow, we walked into this really cool chocolate shop," or "Wow, we went to this great barbecue restaurant." And that word of mouth advertising, it lowers your customer acquisition cost, not to get too nerdy here. You get people coming back for a second visit, so you
Yeah.
have long-term value. Those things are really hard to see from branding, but they're directly relevant.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I was gonna say retention because, again, we're in a tourist town. So when you make that kind of impression on someone, you'll hear them say either they'll leave a written review or you hear them talking to others and they say, "Every time I come to town, I make it a point to come here because I love this place because it just makes me feel so great when I'm here." They talk about that. They walk away with a feeling of, "I can't wait to go back." And that's what I always look for when I'm visiting a place. I always wanna have that, "I can't wait to come back" feeling. And that means I'm gonna also tell other people about it too because I loved it.
And I think also for businesses, it's challenging because your branding can get challenged by your customers. And I'll give you a really good example. I think, a very relevant example for us. Valentine's Day was recently. We had at one point in our little store, we were 100% full. So when you have that many people in the store at exactly the same time, delivering that 7-star service, that brand, keeping all the tables clean, making sure the floors are clean, the bathrooms are all restocked, all that can become very challenging to your brand as a customer. And so a lot of people can form an opinion about that. They can say, "Oh, wow, it was too crowded. I'm not going to come back there anymore." Or, "Wow, the staff was rude to me. They didn't, explain things as clearly as they do." And
Mhm.
that's a challenge, I think, for companies.
I think it is. I think that's another podcast on how to deal with challenging customers who maybe don't understand your brand or just don't cut you any slack. I mean, you look at when you kind of brought this up, the first thing that popped in my brain was Dick's Last Resort restaurant, downtown San Antonio on the Riverwalk. The whole brand is there to make fun of you when you walk in. You didn't understand that and you walked in and your servers immediately started insulting you. You're going to leave a bad review because you didn't understand that that was the brand. So I don't know. That's like I said, I think that's a whole other story for another day on just explaining your brand to people,
You also
possibly.
brought up something really interesting here too, in that a brand shouldn't require you to educate the customer on the brand.
But it almost always
Well, I know,
does.
but most of the time when customers walk in, they should feel the brand, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
so if this is probably not exactly what we're talking about, but it's worth a conversation. Don't be so, like, extraordinarily specific about what you mean your brand to be,
Right.
that you have to actually educate a customer on what it means. Because I think, honestly, customers today aren't gonna spend the time learning it.
Yeah, you can go off the rails with that. I mean, I guess you could get really weird on some of your things that you do in your place that no one else does, and that's your brand, but I don't know.
So I wanna talk a little bit about how we audit brand experiences. So, Melanie and we're pretty good at it. I probably learned this from my mother. So my mother, we call her Grandmama Marie. She's 93, and she'll like walk into business, and she's quiet about it. She's not gonna be ugly to them necessarily, but she is gonna talk to me, and she's gonna say something like, "Bless their hearts," right? Because she's gonna notice something that really quickly she's gonna be that discriminating person. So how do you audit a business, including our own?
How do I personally audit a business? I mean, I walk in and I'm very particular about every single thing, and I have been a business owner, and I know what to look for. I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at all the things we talked about, from the parking lot to the sign to the person that first greets me to the person that second greets me and finishes out my transaction, to the actual product, to the packaging of the product, to the paint on the walls, to the lighting that's in there. How does it smell? How does it sound? Is it really loud? Is it warm and fuzzy, or is it, standoffish and cold? Is it supposed to be standoffish and cold? Like, you're asking the wrong person on that
So I'm
one.
gonna
I
put
have a
you
lot of opinions.
I'm gonna put you on the spot here about this one because I know how meticulous you are, okay? So, right now, across the street at Hill Country Chocolate, if you walked in there, what would be something that would be not part of our branding? Audit us today. What's something that's bugging you
For me
for
right
you
now,
right now? What is your top of mind
um,
bugged thing right now?
the patio furniture is not lined up like it should be because someone moved it to take photos, and I personally have not taken the time to go move the furniture back. There's also a few rocks that are up on the front porch from the freeze that we had that stuck to people's feet, and I sent, someone out to sweep the front porch, and they didn't get I can still see there's a few that were missed.
And I wanna point out that Melanie said I was the OCD one in this discussion.
There might be some fingerprints on the front window too that I thought I saw yesterday that someone should probably get off
Okay, so we talked a
the
lot about
window.
walking the store and the rocks and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
but digital branding is part of it too, right? So today, often people have already audited your business before they ever come. They've looked at your
Mhm.
Instagram, they've looked at Google reviews,
Your
so
website.
your website. And I think one thing to really think about is that you have to really marry the connection. You can have a fantastic digital footprint and then a horrible in-store experience. And in fact, I think that's a recipe for death right there. Because
Absolutely.
people are going to do the research, they're gonna take the time out of their lives, and they're gonna travel to see you, and if they walk in and you don't recreate that same magic, I think that's a recipe for a bad
It just
experience.
creates disappointment, and that's not what you want because you wanna build a perception online. You're assuming your online perception is either prior to them visiting or directly after. So either way, your business has to match, because if they were in there and everything was fantastic and they say, "Oh, I'm gonna go online and I'm gonna shop for caramels," and it's a horrible online shopping experience, they're gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, no." Like, I'm not gonna buy online. I'll just maybe stop by the store if I'm there, maybe.
I think that the online branding is actually 10 times harder than the in-store branding. In the store, you've got an opportunity to visit with someone. You can make it up if you start to slip off on your customer service. You can kind of make it up, but online, people are going to thumb you away. They're
Yeah.
they're gone.
You have
I mean,
one
you have
shot.
one shot, which means that everything about your branding, from the way your checkout works, how fast your page loads, are your graphics really good on your page? Are they up to date? One of my favorite ones is that, are your hours accurate on Google Business? And if somebody pulls up Apple Business, do the hours look the same on Apple that they look on Good Business Google? We've talked about
Yeah.
that before, that being consistent is something that people online really pick up on.
Yep. Yep, absolutely.
So in Fredericksburg, we're in tourist town. So what's a common mistake we see here when we do our walk around on branding?
Sadly, I think probably the most common mistake is the staff. It's the people. There's not a huge labor force here in Fredericksburg, so a lot of times you don't have a lot of options that we are often understaffed and really busy all the time. So I think that several businesses here, they just don't take a step back, take the time to do the training for their staff. I'm not saying it's bad people that are working there. Oftentimes, it's just bad either management or bad training practices that they have not taken the time to train their employees correctly to interact with people and to answer questions and do their job even. And so I think that's really unfortunate and sad that it's usually the people that have an issue. Second to that, I'm gonna have to say and knock on the city of Fredericksburg a little bit, signage is usually pretty bad around here. You can drive down Main Street and you can pick out a couple that are really great and some that are not so great. And the ones that are not so great, we're in a small town. It's the good old boy system. Doesn't matter if it's not so great. They know whoever that got it approved and it's fine. Same thing with architecture of some new buildings that we've had going in. They're not pleasing to my eye, and I'm a native here, and what are you gonna do? Good old boy system. Somebody said somebody's brother wanted it, so that's how it is.
I think I would just say a little bit about small business in general. I think staffing and training are one of those things you would never really think about with branding, but they're
Right.
actually extraordinarily important on your branding. And staff education, staff training, getting your staff together and talking about your branding, giving your staff an opportunity to understand what you're trying to evoke in your company. And you have to live the brand too, which means Melanie knows this about me, back to my being OCD. But if I walk through the tasting room on a Saturday and I see a table that's got things on it, I'm going to pick it up. I'm the business owner, but I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to pick it up and take it to the back and I'm going to wipe the table off, right? Because
Mhm.
that is a part of the thing you do as an owner, thing you do in a business to really kind of tell that story so that your staff can kind of mimic and merchandise that branding too. And that's being very involved. It is hard on business owners and business managers to be able to do that because it's a lot of work. But setting an example for your staff on branding, I think, is really important.
100%, it's leading by example. I mean, how can you tell someone to do something that you're not willing to do yourself? You can't. You have to. You gotta do it first. You gotta show them how it's done, and then you gotta make sure that they keep doing it, and if they don't, show them again.
And I think one last little thing, we'll talk about branding, and I'd love your thought. This is pretty deep, but I'm going to dive into a little bit here. And that is, I think showing people how your product is made, showing people the behind the scenes, getting a relationship with your customers really helps with branding. So if you've noticed a lot of the big companies, they're going to have lots of videos on like the manufacturing process, or they're going to show pictures inside the kitchen. We have floor to ceiling windows at Hill Country Chocolate, so you can
Mhm.
actually see into the kitchen. We do a podcast called Being to Business, right? Where we
Mhm.
talk about our business, but that's actually being a little transparent. That's all part of our brand.
Yeah, anybody who knows me knows I'm ridiculously transparent. I'm gonna tell you way more than you probably wanted to know about me and the things that are flying around in my brain and my head. And I just think everything should be transparent, especially in a business. So putting in the big windows here was a very intentional for multiple reasons. One, we've got some cool stuff. People should be able to see it. And two, we have nothing to hide. And we're doing really cool things back there that people need to see and they need to know. And it helps us remind our employees too that they have got to keep up and keep things presentable because the world is watching and we're inviting our customers to look behind the curtain, see what's going on. I mean, my bakery was in a full open kitchen too. I mean, again, not hiding anything. You have a question, you have a concern, there's a chocolatier, there's somebody standing right there that can answer that question for you who's probably in the process of making something at the time.
And then finally, every customer that walks in your business is actually a reviewer of your branding. And so I think another thing that you need to do, and we do this, we try to do this really well. I'm going to tell you, it's easy as a small business owner to get defensive. So when people makes a comment about the way your logo is, or the way your shiny bonbon is, or whatever, or the way the flavor, it's not milk chocolate or dark chocolate, or whatever your branding is, right? Is taking customer feedback on your branding.
Mhm.
Remember, I'm a strong believer that you shouldn't have to educate a customer on your brand, but customers can often offer a lot of good feedback. And in fact, we've actually had this conversation that sometimes all businesses really need to do is to listen to their customers. And if you listen to your customer and give them what they want, you have a very successful business. So I hope we've given you what you want today in this podcast. If you do, we would really like you to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. We just hit 5,000 followers, so really excited about that. And if you have any questions, then leave them in the comments. We do read those and they become future ideas for episodes. And so until next time, thanks for joining.